we've tipped over to 8. So welcome to the Teach in the UK webinar. Thanks for joining us. It's a really busy time of the year, so we appreciate you jumping on board, and we'll kick off by introducing ourselves so you can see who's on the call tonight. Starting with me, I'm based in New Zealand. I'm one of the Global Opportunities Consultants. We have a team based around the world. We've got a team who are in Australia and also Canada, and we are all supporting educators moving into the UK from our geographies. I'm a primary trained teacher. I taught in New Zealand for 3 years, and then I went and lived and taught in the UK for a couple of years. I lived and worked in London. Once I got home, I wished that I'd gone to experience one of the regions and had a go at teaching somewhere like that. But yeah, I've been in this role ever since, so supporting Kiwi-based educators moving to Australia and the UK. And we're really lucky. We've got 3 consultants who've joined us, who've got up bright and early on their side. It's 7 a.m. over there at the moment. So I'll hand over to Delaney to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I was about to say good morning, but for you guys, good evening. So my name's Delaney. I work over here in the London office. I am currently managing our global pipeline that come across to London. So if my name is familiar, I've probably spoken to you before. But basically my job over here is to help all of our educators from New Zealand, Australia, and Canada make the move over to London. I also work within one of our teams here in the London office, so I help support the northeast boroughs of London as well within that team. So I've kind of got 2 roles at the moment. But a little bit about me, I guess. So I started working with ANZ UK actually as a teaching assistant myself. So I moved over to London in January of last year, started working as a teaching assistant, got a long-term role through ANZ UK. And then it got to about the end of the academic year, and I was like, I really want to work in the office. So put my hand up and kind of found myself here. I definitely don't have a background in recruitment. I have a background in youth work and social work. So working in secondary schools back in Australia in student wellbeing. So a little bit of a different background, but yeah, so made the move early last year and I absolutely love it. And I am so sure everyone else who's kind of thinking about it will love it as well.
Okay. You might need to mute.
So my name's Sophie. I work in the Bristol office. My role is specifically supporting educators locally and globally when they arrive in Bristol, finding work. I do specifically primary schools, so putting teachers into local schools and supporting them through finding placements, whether that's long-term or short-term work, and supporting them kind of ongoing with that. My background is early years, so I was in early years for 8 years before I joined recruitment. A bit like Delaney, didn't have any background in recruitment before I got here, but obviously 8 years of early years and kind of knowing that like the back of my hand has really helped in this role, and also really helped with me being able to provide educators with what they need kind of moving forward. So that's a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm Clint Butler. I'm the regional manager for ANZ UK in Wales. I've been supplying schools with staff for over 16 years throughout South Wales, and was approached to open an ANZ UK office in Newport, which is just outside the capital of Cardiff in South Wales. And yeah, we do the similar things. So we provide opportunities for educators into schools across South Wales, from primary, secondary, and special educational needs settings. And yeah, just looking forward to welcoming as many people as we can to our wonderful country and giving you as many opportunities that's available.
Great, thanks, Kane. Okay, so who we are, just to introduce you to ANZ UK. We're a specialist education recruitment company, so that's our thing, that's what we do. We're global. We've got offices around the world. We have 9 offices across Australia. We've got 2 offices here in New Zealand. We've got a team in Canada, we've got an office in Copenhagen, 14 offices across the States, and what we're talking about tonight are our 5 offices that we have based in the UK. So the whole idea is that we will support you in any geography and in any time zone. So for example, if you're looking to move from New Zealand, you have me on the ground here, and then you'll be chatting to Delaney or Clint or one of Sophie's team in the evenings. And then you'll have that nice connection when you arrive. Some of our educators then will return to Australia. So we're sort of here to support you along the way. We're a free service to educators. And as you'll sort of see, a lot of our staff are educators themselves or have been in the sort of school environment. So we all understand what you're up to, and we understand the significance of moving countries and things. So we're here to sort of make that journey a lot easier and a lot more fun for you, hopefully. Tonight, we're going to be covering the admin side of things, what you need to know to relocate over to the UK, the opportunities available to you. We'll only very briefly touch on compliance, and then we'll talk about the fun stuff about community when you arrive and the process of how we support you through that. I haven't got my notes up. I should do. Oh, yep, this is me. So reasons to go. People have lots of different reasons to pick up their life and move other countries. Most of our Australian, New Zealand educators, your main reason for heading to the UK is the fact that you can, the whole travel, access to going to Portugal in your school holidays rather than going to Taupo, or you've got that excitement on and the ability to actually go to Paris for the weekend and things like that. So the cheap flights to Europe, the lifestyle of living and working in the UK is amazing. It's one of the best things that you'll ever do. Wherever you set yourself up over there, you'll have a nice community of expat educators that we help facilitate for you, but you'll also hopefully meet a lot of UK locals and just sort of make connections from around the world. It is also great to have on your CV, so it can be a really good springboard onto the international school sector, or if you're coming back home to New Zealand or Australia, any international experience on your CV is really highly regarded, and you can quickly move up the ladder when you get back home. But one of the biggest things is probably putting yourself outside your comfort zone. It's going to be one of the hardest things you'll do in your life, but it will also be something that you'll never ever regret doing. So lots of reasons to go, but for the UK, it's the experience and the travel. So the process that we go through, and some of you may have already started on this process, is you'll initially have a chat to one of the global consultants in your geography, whether you're in Australia, New Zealand or Canada. We'll take you through the process. We have sort of visa support that we can give you. And once you've made a decision of when you're going to arrive, then we'll quickly put you in contact with the UK team. If you might have friends who are working in Wales, or you might have heard about Bristol and be heading there. If you're going to London, you're talking to Delaney. So you'll start the connections on that side of the world quite early on in the piece. The compliance team jump in a couple of months before you arrive, and they will take you through sort of the paperwork requirements. We have that all covered for you, so you can just sort of let things happen, and we'll prompt you of what's due and what to do at the right time. Registration, you'll do that before you arrive. So as soon as you've got your arrival confirmed, then the UK team will be organising logistics around making sure that when you get into the country, you're fully cleared and you're ready to go. So the whole idea is there is nothing to do once you land, and technically you can start teaching the day after you arrive. So let's get into some of the more nitty gritty stuff. Is this me or Delaney?
This one's me.
Great. Break up my voice.
So in terms of the best time to arrive, we obviously have educators coming across at all different times throughout the year. This is by no means a rule of thumb that you have to follow. It's just a suggestion if you're unsure about what time you like to come over this side. So obviously the academic year over here is a little bit different to what it is over in Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. I think it's more similar to what it is in Canada than it is over in Oz and New Zealand, but basically our academic year will start in September. So it's a little bit around the other way. We also have our 3 big major terms. So we've got the autumn term, the spring term, and the summer term. And each term is split up into 2 half terms. So your half terms will usually be about 6 to 7 weeks of school. Then you actually have a half term break, so you get a week off, which is lovely. And then you have another 6 to 7 weeks for the second half term before you go into the new term. So just having a look at the calendar there and just the highlighted bits, that's when we have the breaks throughout the academic year. A lot of our educators who are looking for longer term contracts will often come during those times. It just makes things easier when we're putting you into those longer term placements, setting you up from the beginning of a half term or a term to make the continuity a lot easier for schools. But as I said, that doesn't mean that you have to come during that time. We can definitely support throughout the year. It just sort of depends what is going to make the most sense for you.
And it is good to be across that summer holidays is sort of July all through to the 1st of September. So arriving in July means you're probably not going to pick up much work, if any. So just factoring that in financially, or maybe delaying your arrival until after that. So yeah, knowing the time of the year, the next important thing is the visa. You have to have a visa in your passport to be able to work in the UK, unless you're lucky enough to access a UK or Irish passport. The Youth Mobility Scheme visa is the most common pathway to get over there to work. It's a 2-year visa initially. You can extend it for an additional year, which is like what Delaney's doing soon. So you can apply anywhere from 6 months before your arrival. And yeah, as you can see, the processing time is sort of 3 to 10 weeks. So you definitely want to allow at least 3 months if you can, because you have to send your passport away as part of the process. So you don't want to be cutting it fine, leaving for the UK in a week and you still haven't got your visa back. So that you allow a decent amount of time for it to be processed. You'll also need to be aware of the cost and make sure that you sort of plan ahead in advance for that. And you can see the total cost down there of the visa. A huge chunk of the cost is for the healthcare surcharge. So it's like a compulsory health insurance, really. You're paying sort of around $1,500 towards that, but it means that you're covered for any accidents or medical issues that happen over there. You will be covered by the UK healthcare system. So, it's worth what your money is going towards something really worthwhile. We do have a visa support team. They can take you through the whole process for the visas for $150. Yeah, so that's an option out there for you as well. Is there anything on the visa, Delaney? I feel like I've skipped something.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think, yeah, as you said, the main thing just to be aware of is when you go through the visa application itself, the payments will be split up into the 2. There are the approximate prices just on the slide there, but just be aware those are application costs and the NHS costs. That's not something that you can opt out of, so you will have to pay for both of those. But I would highly recommend utilising our visa support team. We've got a lot of educators coming through at the moment who are going through our visa support team, when we've had nothing but really positive feedback about it. It's just really easy just to have someone to hold your hand through like a big scary process sometimes, because they'll tell you exactly what you need to have prepared and they'll basically step you through the whole thing. So I can definitely recommend utilizing them. Yeah,
it's a bit of a minefield of information otherwise when you're going onto the thing. So yeah. There are some other visa options. Oh, what I didn't cover, sorry, was that there is an age restriction on this visa. You need to apply for it before you turn 36. If you're not eligible for that, another option could be the ancestry visa. This is a lot more expensive. You need to have a grandparent born in the UK, but there is no age restriction on this visa, and you can take dependents on that visa as well. Otherwise, if you went to the Uni of Melbourne or the Uni of Queensland, there are some options for graduates there who, if you graduated in the last 5 years, you could look at an HPI visa. We've got more information on all of these things. Skilled worker visas are potentially available, but you do need to be normally secondary English, math, science, and have a few years experience behind you, or maybe try and find a nice English person and see whether you can get a spousal visa or partner visa that way. Yeah, so we can talk to you in more detail about visas initially.
Cool.
Options. Cool.
So in terms of locations, so obviously we've got the 5 there. We've also just recently opened a new region, which I'll quickly chat about as well. So obviously we have our London office. So our London office is probably the biggest one in the UK at the moment. But a lot of the other offices are fantastic options as well if you like the idea of visiting London, but not maybe staying within the hustle and bustle of a ginormous city. We know that a lot of people coming across who may be used to more rural settings back home often will opt for something a bit quieter, but still having access to the big cities as an option. There's still really, really great work options out there as well. So obviously we've got London. We have Surrey, which is down in southwest England. So you can actually get from Surrey into London very, very easily. Usually within 45 to 50 minutes, you can get from Surrey to London. We've also got Wales, Bristol, Southampton. Southampton's down on the south coast of England. And then we also have just recently opened a new region, which is East London and Essex. So you're kind of going out the east part of London. That's currently operating out of the London office at the moment, but we do have work opportunities out there as well. So firstly, we've got London. So obviously one of the massive selling point for a lot of people coming across. It's definitely got that big city vibe, lots of hustle and bustle, fantastic transport options, all that sort of stuff. It's basically got everything you want. I guess in terms of breaking it down a little bit, we do have some options around there around rent costs and public transport and things like that. So in terms of rentals, you can usually find a room in London between £700 and £900 per month. So most of the rentals that you'll find in London will be paid per month. Often they'll be in share houses, or you'll also be like, whether you like doing a buddy up sort of system as well. So that's kind of like an approximate amount. Obviously there are things that are priced higher, but my recommendation would be do lots of research into the different areas of London and try not to pay over that £1,000 mark, because it can get very, very expensive. Obviously the closer into the central part of London that you are, the more expensive rent's going to be. In terms of public transport, you can get monthly passes for public transport for around £184 per month. Personally, myself, I just tap on and off on my phone. It's much easier to just do a tap on and off with your card, but you can also get Oyster cards, which is like the travel pass over here, and link them up to your account. So we can definitely help you set up with that as well once you're kind of going through that process with us. And then I guess in terms of cost of living, so yeah, a pub meal, roughly £15, a coffee around £3. If you're going for alternative milk, like a lot of people do these days, you're probably looking towards more the £5 mark. And then you've also got a pint for about £6, and then you can get meal deals for around £5. If you don't know what a meal deal is yet, most people in Oz and New Zealand have no idea what that means. It is like an absolute lifesaver, and it's honestly
So good.
So good. So yeah, so it's obviously on the more expensive side of things, being a big city, but obviously being the big city, you've got access to so many things while you're here in London as well.
Yeah, those lunchtimes are exciting over there, aren't they? There's so much.
We love a meal deal. Cool. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, we do have our Surrey office, which is down in southwest England. As I mentioned, very, very easy to get into central London from Surrey. Surrey is beautiful, a lot more greenery, a lot more open spaces. It's got much more of a quiet feel, but still being very close to the city. So obviously being a bit further out, your rent accommodation is always going to be that bit cheaper. So usually for a room in Surrey, you're looking between £500 to £700 a month. Monthly pass for public transport was obviously a bit cheaper as well at £95.65. And then in terms of cost of living, ever so slightly cheaper. So pub meal around £13. Coffee still sitting around the £3 mark. Pints coming down a little bit more, which is great, at around £5. And then your meal deal ever so slightly cheaper as well, around the £4 mark too.
Hi, okay, over to Cardiff in Wales. So yeah, cost of living, again, it's one of the most affordable places to live in the UK. It says there a room in Cardiff, 525 to 650. You can actually get your own apartment for about £800 a month. So for the cost of a room, you get your own apartment. Or even if you go a little bit out of the city to Newport, where we are at the moment, you could probably get a little 2-bedroom house for similar money. Again, really affordable to eat and live in Wales. The cost of a pint comes, well, the pub next door to the office here, you can actually get a pint of beer for less than £2. So super cheap, super affordable for beers. Sophie will probably back me on this because they've got them in Bristol as well, the Wetherspoon pubs. I popped in there the other day and there was a pint of beer for £1.49, which blew me away. So I had a few in there at lunchtime, which was quite nice. But yeah, we're literally an hour and 45 minutes on the train to London. So, you know, if you want to come to Wales a little more rural, then you can still have your big city adventures into London. We're super close to Bristol as well. So we've got the Bristol International Airport. Cardiff, Wales has got an international airport as well. You're only ever 40 minutes away from a beach when you live in Wales. Not quite the Gold Coast, but we have got some lovely beaches in Wales. And there's a lot of history. So we've got over 800 castles throughout Wales, which the educators that have come over in the past are really keen to get around and see some of those. And our capital city, Cardiff, has got one of the best sporting venues in the world. It used to be called the Millennium Stadium, now the Principality. And I highly recommend going to a Welsh Rugby International Day there. The city goes from about 400,000 people to 800,000 people over the weekend. And it's a real melting pot of cultures. It's fantastic. You've got babies going to the stadium from 6 months old all the way up to 90-year-olds, and everybody's singing, and it's one of the best days out you'll ever have. So yeah, really looking forward to welcoming some people over to Wales.
The international airports for the regions is a really big selling point. You know, people sort of think you've got to be in London to go get to Europe, but traveling from the regional international airports is so much easier, isn't it? You know, you just, yeah, your process, you've gone through immigration so quickly, and
just the cost of flights are mind-blowing. I think, you know, I got a flight to Europe. We went to Italy back last year from Bristol International Airport, actually, and it was £35 return flights. It was just crazy. If you catch them at the right time, it's probably cheaper than me to get a taxi home from work.
Absolutely. And in London, like it costs almost that just to get to the airport. You can get the cheap flights, but then it's expensive, isn't it, to get to the airport? So yeah, nice. Okay, Bristol.
So my main selling point was going to be the international airport, but we've covered that a bit already. I've been on many flights from Bristol. I went over to Portugal last year. I went to Mallorca, all for really cheap. You can get really good package holidays with the airlines that fly from Bristol as well. But I think that with Bristol, I'm a bit biased. So I actually grew up in London, born and raised there, and I moved to Bristol. It was supposed to only be for a couple of months. 5 years later, I'm still here. As soon as I came to Bristol, I just absolutely fell in love with it. The reason I fell in love with it is because I feel like you get the best of everything here. So you've got the hustle and bustle of city life. It's often referred to as kind of a mini London. So you get that hustle and bustle, you get that city life, but we've also got large green spaces. So in 2015, we were awarded Green Capital of the Year because of the green spaces that we have. And during the summer, they're filled with people having picnics and barbecues, and it's just a lovely vibe for everyone. And then we also are very close to the beaches ourselves. We've got some lovely beach towns, Portishead, Clevedon, across kind of the west coast of England, and moving down into Cornwall. The beaches, you can get there kind of within 20-30 minutes on public transport, or kind of half an hour in the car, but we're also working all the way down in the southwest of England. So Bristol is kind of our main hub, but we also work with schools in Bath, in Gloucester, we work with schools right down Somerset and into Devon, and hopefully kind of moving into that Cornwall area soon as well. So we cover the whole southwest, but I am biased to Bristol, and I do think that it is a lovely place to set yourself up. In terms of costings and everything like that, it is relatively cheap, depending on, I think Delaney touched on it, depending on whether you're looking for kind of a room in a house share or whether you're looking for your own apartment. Obviously, the own apartment is going to come at a higher cost to you. Monthly passes for public transport are about £71, but you could tap on and tap off of buses anyway, which makes life a little bit easier. We also have electric scooters in Bristol, where you can, I think it's about £5 and £5 to £10 a week, and you can hire an electric scooter to get you around, and that's a really good way of getting around Bristol, because the traffic can sometimes be a little bit annoying, to say the least. That way you get to cut that out, and then cost of living in general, it is all relatively cheap here. Meal deals, Tesco Club Card. If you come over to the UK, you've got to get a club card from Tesco, and that way you can get your lunch for £3.40 instead. So I would definitely recommend that.
I miss Tesco.
Yeah, I'll jump in about Southampton. Southampton's one of our newest locations, down on the beautiful south coast of England. Actually, our national ops director lives in Southampton and commutes back and forth to London, so very accessible to London. I think it's about an hour train, little over an hour. Great access to mainland Europe. You've got ferries that go regularly from Portsmouth, which is just the city next door to Southampton. So again, if you're not fond of flying, then you've got those access to the ferries to get over to mainland Europe pretty easily. And yeah, as I say, it opened last year, our office in Southampton, and it's really thriving. They're bringing on new schools all the time, primary, secondary, SEN schools. And they're really keen to attract more overseas people into those settings. That's the feedback that we're getting from the schools there, hence why we've opened that location, due to demand. So again, a fantastic option for anybody thinking of coming over. Very affordable, being outside of London, and as I say, very accessible as well.
So Chippen, with me on this one, guys, but what most people will do is find something temporary initially. So stay with friends or do an Airbnb, or a lot of people can also sublease rooms. If you, we've got lots of sites that we can recommend to find those subleases, but just give yourself a couple of weeks when you arrive to give yourself time to look for a flat. Yeah, it can be quite competitive. So you need to be really proactive, try and line up your viewings as soon as you arrive, or even line them up a couple of days before you leave, so that you're sort of hitting the ground running. You should go and view the flats yourself. There's scams and things. You need to be careful if you before committing to anything unseen. Rents monthly. Most places are furnished. That's something that we're not used to, right down to knives and forks. So you just go and buy your linen. What else can I say, team?
I can quickly jump in. So yeah, I think the
Yes,
most
yes.
common thing that a lot of people do when they move over is get accommodation sorted for anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks. It's always a good amount of time to give yourself time to settle in a new country, find your feet. You might start work, you might not, just might enjoy London, whatever, or wherever you are, whatever you need to do. But yeah, definitely give yourself a couple of weeks at least to do some pretty serious flat hunting. I'm not sure what it's like out in the regions, but I imagine it will be quite similar in terms of the competitiveness. But in London in particular, depending on the time of year, it can be very much like a full-time job trying to find a flat. Still lots of accommodation out there. It's just one of those things that you really need to put a bit of time and effort into. Definitely view the places in person yourself. Yeah, as Claire said, we have heard of scams and things like that happen, and it's an awful sort of thing to hear about. So just making sure you don't put any money down for anything until you're here and seeing something in person. As Claire said as well, once it gets a little bit closer, we're more than happy to sort of step you through some of the different sites that we recommend looking into. I always say jumping onto the Aussies in London or Kiwis in London, or Aussies in the UK and Kiwis in the UK Facebook groups. It's always a good place to start if you're looking at different areas, and you can kind of see what you're going to get for your money in different areas. They all do weekly flat posts as well. So I always encourage my educators coming through about 2 months out just to start browsing through those flat posts, just to see what sorts of things you're going to get for your money in what sorts of areas. But yeah, most places are already furnished, some aren't, so just make sure you double check that. But then we do also have our online websites, kind of like realestate.com. I know that we have in Australia. I'm sure New Zealand's probably got a similar one as well. But we have Rightmove and Zoopla, which is very similar to those websites as well. Cool, this is Megan. So I guess in terms of work opportunities, the sorts of things that we can support with. So we do have our day-to-day work, which is what we call supply. So over in Australia, we call it CRT work. I think New Zealand calls it CRT as well. I'm not 100% sure, something similar.
Relief
Relief, there you
teaching.
go, same sort of thing. So
Yeah.
we can definitely support with the day-to-day sort of stuff. This is where you're looking for a lot of flexibility. So a lot of our educators will come over kind of having an idea about whether they want to go into a longer term contract or if they really want super flexible work. So with the day-to-day work, we do also offer what we call an ambassador contract over here in London for our teachers. Unfortunately, not for support staff at the moment, but basically it's a guaranteed daily supply for a certain amount of days throughout the week. So that's always a really good option, especially when you first move and you're like, I don't know where I'm going to live, but I need income, and I want to make sure I'm getting steady income. So that's always a good option. We do also have fixed term contracts. So a fixed term contract is usually a longer term contract within a school. It might be for a full academic year. It could be a maternity contract. It could be for even like an academic term. It just sort of depends. With those contracts as well, the consultants over here in the UK are fantastic at setting up online interviews prior to your arrival if you're interested in being pre-placed into a school before you get here. So some educators really like that option of just having something solidified before you move over. And then we do also assist with permanent contracts. So if you're looking for work in a school and are interested in doing that permanently, so being employed permanently through the school, that's definitely something that we can support with as well. It would obviously mean that you're going directly through a school, but we can sort of support through that whole process as well. In terms of the types of schools and nurseries that we work with, so we've obviously got our early childhood educations. Over here, we call them nurseries. We were literally just having a debate in the London office yesterday about what we call that in different countries and things like that. Even in Australia, in different states, we call them different things. So yeah, that was very interesting. So we've got early childhood, so anything preschool. We also have primary, secondary. We do work with public and independent schools as well. And then we do also work with special educational needs needs settings too. As part of the SEND as well, we do work with some schools here in London that are called PRU schools, and that basically stands for Pupil Referral Units. And basically a PRU school is an alternative learning setting, lots of really small class sizes, often a lot of behaviour mentoring sort of stuff as well, which a lot of our teaching assistants that come over really like that sort of work. Something a bit different. It's a lot more, focusing on that mentorship rather than just the academics as well, if you're a little bit unsure about that side of things. So we do have that option too.
And you don't need experience, do you, to work in special needs? Or you can just jump
No.
straight in?
So if you want to jump into the next slide, I'll talk through the different TA type of roles. That's okay. So in terms of the teaching assistant roles that we support with, so as a teaching assistant, it's an unqualified role. So you don't actually need any prior qualifications. You don't technically need any prior experience working with children either. Obviously, any experience with children is always advantageous, and it's always going to be a lot more appeal to schools. In saying that, though, we do offer quite a lot of opportunities for our educators to upskill as well. So we do have online platforms where you can upskill yourself. We do also work with a company called NASEN, and NASEN is an online special educational needs training portal. It's all free. It's not compulsory, but if it's something that you were interested in but wanted to sort of clue yourself up a little bit more before jumping into one of those roles, we do offer that training as well. And you get a bit of an accreditation at the end of it as well. A lot of the schools that we partner with also are aware of NASEN. So whenever we market you off to our schools, if we say that this educator is NASEN trained, it's always a big tick, tick, tick on their end. So that's always a really good option for our TAs too. Anyone can be a TA. Doesn't have to be someone who's been in education before, literally anybody. So definitely worthwhile having a think about if you've not stepped into the education sector before. We obviously work with teachers, so qualified teachers, primary, secondary, and early childhood. We do also have what's called a cover supervisor. So a cover supervisor over here in Australia, New Zealand, you might hear about it as an unqualified relief teacher. So basically you'd be kind of like a CRT, but without the qualification. So instead of creating lesson plans and teaching content, you're sort of more facilitating a lesson while the class teacher is out. Usually cover supervisor roles are predominantly within secondary schools, where the children are a little bit more independent learning as well. But that's always a really good option too. We always recommend, if you're interested in being a teaching assistant, if you feel confident enough doing cover supervisor work as well, that can be a really great option. It also pays slightly more, which is great. And then we do also have admin roles. Sometimes we get groundskeeping type roles as well, sort of like a range of sort of things within admin too. So whether that's reception, it might be, HR, that sort of stuff too. So a bit of a range within the schools.
Pay rates, is that me? I think so pay rates, they will vary depending on where you're based. Obviously each region will pay slightly different pay rates, and London is always a higher pay rate and reflect to the cost of living. So normally it's sort of relative, or if you're in day-to-day or contract roles, you're paid on a weekly basis. If you do move into permanent work, then that's paid on a monthly basis. What else can we say about pay rates? The daily rates are generally set. They are reflective slightly on your experience. If you move into long-term positions, then they are based on the UK salary scale. So you will be sort of earning, your experience is more recognised once you move into long-term roles over there. Generally, pay rates are similar to New Zealand pay rates. If you're coming from Australia, you may find that the pay rate is a little bit less than what it is in Australia. But yeah, again, it's all reflective to cost of living. So you'll probably find you have a similar lifestyle.
Can I just jump in there, Claire?
Yes.
Wales is particularly attractive in regards to daily supply rates, because we've got a national framework just been implemented in Wales that protects teachers' pay and conditions. So the daily supply rate in Wales is some of the best in the UK now. So they've really protected that. The Welsh government have done a lot of work on that. So even with the low cost of living, the pay rates are up with London at the moment in Wales, which is phenomenal for supply teachers.
Well, yeah, especially like you say, in relation to cost of living, which is one of the lowest. So yeah, a good way to go for financial, financial side of things. And then we do offer some incentives and bonuses to be aware of. So as Delaney mentioned, we do have the ambassador scheme available. If you decide that that's for you and you sign up before you arrive, you'll get £250 once you've worked 60 days over there. So it's just a little bit to try and help replenish some of your costs from getting over there. If you take on a contract before you go, so if you have a digital interview and accept a role before you arrive into the UK, once you've worked 60 shifts, then you'll get a £500 bonus, or up to £500 actually. It's on your flights. Is that right, Delaney?
Yeah,
you
it's
need
part
to
of the
keep
flight
your receipts.
reimbursement. Yeah, so you just need to
Yes.
keep your flight receipts just for that, so that we can see them over here. And then once you've worked up to 60 shifts with us, that's when you can get reimbursed for part amount of your flights.
Yeah, great. And then we also have the referral fee that's always running. So if you do refer anyone to us, make sure they mention your name. That'll get lodged on the as a referral. And once they've completed, I think it's 10 shifts, you'll get £150. So it's definitely worth doing. So keeping your eyes on that. Is that me? Yep. Next step. So where to from here? What we normally need to get started is a CV. It doesn't matter if you don't have one, though. If you've made the decision to head over, reach out to your local consultant in your local geography, and we'll get the ball rolling for you. At some point on your journey, we will need a CV. We've got CV templates we can send through to you, and we can sort of talk you through what the expectations are for the UK. You'll need 2 professional references. If you're a new grad, that will be from your associate teachers on your placements, otherwise to cover the last 2 years of your teaching. And then the rest of the compliance is covered from our side. We'll take you through all that. Delaney,
just quickly on the compliance side of things as well, when it comes to the references and all those other documents, as Claire said, our compliance team over here in the UK are amazing. They're super fast and very thorough with what they do. So any one of the compliance team will be able to kind of like hold your hand through that process as well. So if there's anything you're unsure about, please don't think that you're not going to be eligible to work with us. For example, if you've not worked in education before, we can accept other professional references from previous work. So yeah, if you're not sure about something, please just ask the question. It's very, very common for us to be able to clear most people that come through, as long as obviously, the vetting's all okay. So yeah, don't think that that's something that you're not eligible for if you've not worked in schools before. Cool. In terms of community and events, so we do host a lot of regular social events throughout the year, obviously in Australia, New Zealand and Canada, but also over here in the UK. So I know the regions will do their own social events as well, but we do have big welcome events that happen in London 3 times throughout the year. So we do have our September welcome event, which is obviously for the educators that are coming over for the start of the academic year. We do also have a February welcome event, because we obviously have a lot of educators coming from December, January, because usually that's the end of the academic year over in Australia, New Zealand. And then we do have another big one that happens in May as well for the next sort of lot of teachers for the next academic year. So we do have 3 really big events where we invite all of our new educators to come and mingle, meet all of the team. Often the regions will come as well, so we invite all educators from the regions too. It's just a really good way to meet a bunch of people who are in a very similar situation to you. So moving overseas can be very, very scary, and it's often really nice just to connect with people who have the similar sort of situation and are like-minded as well, which is really, really nice. Up in London, we do have quite a lot of social events on the calendar, usually around once a month. They're not always at the pub, which is usually what we kind of do, but we're kind of spreading it out a little bit. So for example, we recently ran a big pub crawl called Chase the Chook, which I'm sure Kiwis and Aussies are aware of what that is, which was lots of fun. We had one of our local Kiwis, George, who you might see on Kiwis in London a lot, dressed up as a giant chicken running through London drinking beers, which was pretty funny. But then we do also things like we do have a Pilates series. We do like drop-ins for like just coffee and a chat. We're doing like a theatre night in December, women's Arsenal games, all sorts of things, where it gives you lots of opportunity to meet lots of people, which is great. So that's always definitely a good one to keep in mind. If you are coming through from a different country over to the UK, we will always send you out information about all of our upcoming events as well, so you can get involved. But we do also have our pre-departure events that will happen in your local cities, in your geographies as well. So, for example, I know there is one coming up in December, I believe, in Brisbane. We often have them in Melbourne and Sydney as well. So lots of opportunities to meet some educators going over at similar times to yourself as well, and make some of those connections, which is really, really nice. And we do also have our Educators Moving to the UK Facebook group. So the Facebook group, as much as Facebook can be a bit dated, the Facebook group is a really good spot to just connect with people. So you'll see me in there. You'll see a lot of educators that are already here. You'll see a lot of educators coming over. You'll see a lot of consultants and people who already work within the team over here as well. So just a really good platform to ask questions. Yeah, make some friends before you move, or make some friends over here as well. So yeah, just a really good starting point as well, just to build a little bit of a community, which is really, really nice.
But Sophie, do you want to chip in anything there? I know you guys do local things as well. Yeah.
No, I think Delaney covered all of it. We do our own local events. So we did one. When was it? I think it was just at the end of the academic year last year in July. We did a quiz, and we hired out a venue, and it was really lovely. So we don't have as many overseas educators in Bristol, because London obviously steal them all, but because London is so wanted, we don't have as many. So we had, I think there was about 25 of us, and so it was really intimate, and it was really lovely, and we're planning on doing that kind of each term, but we would always suggest going to the ones that are hosted in London, and most of our educators do, and when they come back they always say what a great time they had going to them, and I'm definitely going to be at this one because I want to get involved this time too.
Good. No, I heard the last Bristol one was really, really good. We have actually updated this now. We've got a winter gig guide. Liv's just organised, so we should have flipped that over. But yeah, we have lots of good resources and tips for you for things coming up. So that's just an example of what's on. So to wind up, we do have a QR code, but I will send through an email to everyone who's registered for the webinar that will have the contact points for us and next steps, so you can book in a call with one of us that way, or if you want to, you can scan the QR code. But to wrap up, if anyone does have any questions, you can pop them in the chat, or turn your camera on, or ask them.
Something I think is super important to think about is the unique opportunity with ANZ UK are our different locations around the UK. So if you do decide on a region to come over, or London, that you're not stuck in that region, it's super easy to transfer from one to the other. So once you've gone through that compliance process, say you come to Wales and you think, do you know what, I think I'd really like a stint in London, super easy to transfer up to London, or vice versa. If you go to London and think, oh, I'd like something a little more laid back, a bit less expensive, easy to come to Wales or Bristol or Southampton. So I think that's quite a unique opportunity that we offer with that, and also the 360 piece. So when you decide to go home, whether that's Australia, New Zealand, we've got on the ground consultants there 6 months before you decide to come back. We can put you back in touch with those guys on the ground who can support you back and find you work when you arrive back home. So I think that's super important to remember, that if you do choose a location and decide to come to the UK, you're not stuck in that location. You could do 6 months in Wales, 6 months in Bristol. You could have a real tour of the UK as well while you're here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really different experience as well, living and working in one of the regional cities compared to London. And yeah, I would have loved to have done that. So I think it's a great point. Any questions? Anybody? Okay, we might finish that up. I will send out a recording of the session that'll come through probably by Friday if I've got it converted by then. But otherwise, thanks for joining us tonight.